Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Central Baltimore Partnership in the Station North Arts District, I would like to welcome everyone for joining us this afternoon to kick off the third annual Asia North Festival and exhibition that will run through Friday, May 15th. Asia North celebrates art, culture, and community. The event provides context for the historical significance of Baltimore's unofficial Koreatown that is located at the intersection of North Avenue and Charles Street. Today, the Korean presence remains strong with the collection of several iconic Korean restaurants, one of which you'll see later this evening. As life returns to normal, we hope to see you in the neighborhood to enjoy the amazing Korean cuisine or maybe even catch a movie. Before we start programming this evening, I'd like to express solidarity with our Asian American Pacific Islander brothers and sisters who have been targets of hate and violence. The recent shootings in Atlanta and countless other attacks on Asian Americans crystallize the struggle still ahead to stamp out the vitriol that has become all too common in our daily lives. Today's celebration symbolizes the love of community and culture that had always made us the underpinnings of what makes us great. This commonality will defeat any attempt to divide us based on color of skin, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. When we came together last year for the second annual Asia North Festival and Exhibition, we had just witnessed the murder of George Floyd. I used a quote from Jacob Lawrence, my favorite artist and one of the nation's most prolific Black artists, to provide a sense of solace and solidarity with our African American community and the Black Lives Matter movement. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we are still mourning the killing of George Floyd and still grappling with the aftermath. Lawrence's quote still resonates today, and his quote reads like this: "When the subject is strong, simplicity is the only way to treat it. Though there is no simple way to describe the poignant state of our nation's mood last year or currently, with so much racism and violence hurting too many people." However, I am sure that Lawrence's message to us all would be simple and clear. We are stronger together and better when everyone is treated fairly and equitably. Before I introduce my good friend, Joanna Bakore, Director of the Asian Arts and Culture Center at Towson University, I'd like to send a special thanks to my colleague, Lauren Dwyer, Program Coordinator for the Station North Arts District. We will meet later in the programming, for making Baltimore's unofficial Koreatown a little taller and certainly culturally expressive. She was instrumental in bringing the art installation to us this evening, a short film that illuminates the power, the creativity, and the meaning of the works in the exhibition. I hope you all enjoy the program. I would now like to introduce Joanna Bakore, who will give an understanding of the creative, collaborative approach that created Asia North.
Welcome, everyone. The Asian Arts and Culture Center at Towson University harnesses the powers of art and culture to combat prejudice, racism, and xenophobia, to amplify the voices of Asian and AAPI communities, to promote cross-cultural dialogue and understanding, and to illuminate what makes us one human family. Established in 1971, the Asian Arts and Culture Center has a 50-year history of increasing the visibility of Asian and AAPI stories and creativity. Our exhibits and programs promote cultural equity by moving Asia from the margins and viewing the world through the lenses of Asian and AAPI experiences. AANCC's work, sadly, is more important than ever as we continue to witness the increasingly disturbing rise of anti-Asian racism and violence. Please join us in our mission to challenge harmful cultural narratives by speaking out against anti-Asian hate, advocating for greater cultural equity, promoting conversations across communities, and sharing Asian stories. The more we listen to one another and exchange experiences, the more empathy and understanding we can build. As a co-producer of Asian North, we're thrilled to offer this program to kick off our 2021 exhibition and festival tonight. This meeting is being recorded. Also, if you'd like to close captioning, you can view the transcript in a separate window by going to the streamtext.net link we'll put in the chat. We thank our transcriptionist, Diane Conway, for joining us tonight. I'd briefly like to offer a short history of this project and thank some key players. Asia North was born in April 2017 to promote intercultural sharing, support AAPI creatives, and celebrate local Asian American history. I had a conversation with Will Backstrom of PNC Bank, who told me about Jack at the Central Baltimore Partnership and Station North's double identity as a Koreatown and arts district, and suggested a partnership. Because we got so busy, it wasn't until January 2018 that we all met to brainstorm further. We had many visions for this program: an AACC art space in Station North, a pop-up exhibition, and a large neighborhood festival. Eventually, we decided that a month-long exhibit with a weekend celebration would be the most effective and feasible means of celebrating the neighborhood's art, culture, and Asian heritage. We used that framework to produce our first Asian North in April 2019. We built on our 2019 success to plan Asia North 2020, originally envisioned as a live exhibit and festival with performances at the Motor House and an underground night market and graffiti alley with the Charm City Night Market, all scheduled for April and May 2020. But then COVID arrived and we had to adapt our plans. After shifting gears, we produced the Asia North 2020 exhibit online and 3 virtual experiences like this one. This year, we're excited to offer you an exhibit, both online and socially distanced throughout Station North at the Motor House, Joe Squared, the Parkway Theater, the North Avenue Market, Impact Hub, and Nancy by Snack. We also offer an online exhibit, tonight's kickoff event, an online night market, tonight at 6:30 by Charm City Night Market, a virtual concert by Dong Shi, and 3 virtual workshops led by Lech Borja and Margaret Huey. Jack Dana at the Central Baltimore Partnership is our community connection and resource dynamo. He worked together with the amazing Mara Dreyer to find sponsors, make arrangements with our partners in Station North, install the exhibition, and organize the night market online with the Charm City Night Market. Before passing the mic to my colleague, Nerissa Paglinawan, who curated the exhibit, I'd like to thank our major partners and supporters for Asia North. Asia North 2021 is co-produced by the Asian Arts and Culture Center and the Central Baltimore Partnerships. Our partners and sponsors include the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Maryland State Arts Council, Yoshinobu and Kathleen Shiota, the Asian Arts and Culture Center members, citizens of Baltimore County, the William G. Baker Jr. Memorial Fund, TD Bank, PNC Bank, BBT Truist, Station North Arts District, Mike Schechter, Motor House, North Avenue Market, the Parkway, Impact Hub, Joe Squared, Nancy by Snack, Charm City Night Market, WYPR, Asian Pacifica Arts Collective, Guppy Management Services, Community Housing Partners, Brown Rice, Johns Hopkins University, Baltimore Kawasaki Sister Cities Committee, Baltimore Changwon Sister Cities Committee, and the Baltimore Jewelry Center. Jewelry Center. So, and that's all I have to say to you tonight. And I want to turn the program over to Nerissa Paglinawan and enjoy the show.
Thank you, Joanna. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out or logging on during such a beautiful day. Initially, I thought it was going to be a rainy day, but maybe some of you are joining us from outdoors on this beautiful day to celebrate Asia North 2021 with us. It means a great deal to me and all of these artists for you to come out and support Asian and AAPI artists and really support the diverse voices that we're presenting here today. And I just wanted to do a special shout out again to Mara Dwyer, who's running our tech and who was so instrumental in helping to get the physical installation down in Station North and working with all the different venues. Also, huge shout out to Accomplished Art Services and Jeffrey Kent for their brilliant installation and problem solving and just making all the works look spectacular in the windows displays. So hopefully you can make it down there and also check out the exhibition online. And without further ado, I'd like to start our virtual kickoff with our first performance from the Korean Performing Arts Academy of America. KPAAA shares the beauty of and educates audiences about Korean performance traditions. At Asia North 2021's kickoff event, the group performs a drumming tradition known as salmunori. Salmunori translates to play of four things and is usually performed sitting on the floor by a small ensemble comprised of four percussive instruments: the buk, which is a barrel drum, janggu, which is an hourglass-shaped drum, jing, which is the gong, and the kwengwari, a small hand gong. They will present an original work created by KPAAA's head director, Hyung-Ju Cho. It demonstrates several of Korea's standard traditional rhythms in their simplest forms, followed by degrees of virtuosic variations. The rhythms are gutguri, samachi, mandagnori, jajinmori, and huimori. The performers are Hyung-Ju Cho, Sun-hee So, Damiso Shlobom, Seon-hee-oh, Irene Kim, and Aaron Kim. that was fantastic. And we have more for you from KPAAA. Sayon Jung, through her Worisori Mosaic project, Sayon Jung revives and adapts folk and modern stories to the revered storytelling tradition of pansori. A doctoral candidate at the Seoul National University, she has won national awards and actively performs throughout South Korea, modernizing the art for a broader contemporary audience. Jung presents highlights from her original performance of The Man Who Could Walk Through Walls, based on the French novelist Marcel Aimé's Ne Pas Mourir. In this adaptation, the protagonist, Dutilleux, is named Mansu Park, and the story is set in Seoul. One day, a tired and weary Mansu comes home from a long day at work. Resting against a wall outside his apartment, he suddenly finds himself inside with the ability to pass through walls.
누구도 만수 씨의 변화를 못 알아챈다. 존재감이 1도 없는 것이 참 다행이라. 후의 속이 부글부글 끓지만 어쩌겠나. 이 또한 직장 생활이며 내 처지가 만연 미생인 것을. 김 과장이 들어온다. 김만수 과장이 들어온다. 싸나운 과장이 들어오면 에이 박씨, 아유 박진 과장 사무실 표간편으로 슬그먼 이 머리를 트민다. 김만수 과장, 당신은 꼰대다. 날 강도에다 개망난이요. 진기루가 나타났다. 진기루가 나타나 진기루가 잡혔다. 동료들이 경악을 한다. 동료들이 경악을 해. 박만수가 신기루였어? 거짓인 줄 알았는데 참말일 줄이야. 우리 방도 다 돌아다닌 거 아니야? 어머, 어떡하나? 친해져 둘 것을 후회한다. 후회. 알아봤어야 했는데. 아이고 하느님. 근데 만수 씨는 왜 자수했을까요?
타로! 박만수가 타로했다!
아이고 내 속이 다 시원하네. 저 공권형의 무능함을 보십시오. 헐, 영화보다 꿀잼. 요새 벽에 무턱대고 몸을 박고 있는 사람들이 뇌진탕과 골절상으로 응급실에 몰리고 있다고 합니다. 은미야 나와 멀리 멀리 도망가자. 남편이란 벽을 뚫고 우리 함께 나가자. 세간의 온갖 장애 헐헐 털고 벗어나자. 네가 내게 삶을 주었으니 이제 너 하나만 위해 살 테다.
Our next artist is Derrick Quevedo, who we featured in our first annual Asia North exhibition. He is a diasporic Ilocano and Tagalog who paints, draws, and writes. He received his MFA from Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts and his BFA from University of Hartford. Quevedo will introduce the works he created and posted on Instagram each day of October 2020 in honor of Filipino American History Month. Let's give a warm welcome to Derrick Quevedo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Narisa, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Hi, Kayla. So to begin my talk about Filipino American History Month, or FAM for shorthand, in 2020, I'm going to begin in 2019. First slide, please. So I spent most of 2019 making work for Charm City Night Market. And after that wrapped up in September, I had no projects planned in the studio until I received an Instagram notification that a friend of mine tagged me in an Instagram challenge. So using a word of the day for reflection, I was supposed to make a post every day during Filipino American History Month, which is in October. And I decided why not, and I accepted their challenge. Next slide, please. So though I nonchalantly agreed to the challenge, it immediately became something I took very seriously. I began researching, creating posts, and adapting my own studio process towards accomplishing goals daily. Short captions for the images suddenly became these entire essays, combining historical accounts with personal reflections and contemporary contexts for what that meant as being FilAm today. This is a portrait of Manong Fred Cordova and his wife Manang Dorothy Cordova. They're responsible for establishing October as Filipino American History Month here in the US. And to the right are like the highest honor I received the whole month in 2019, which was their granddaughters liking and appreciating the post and interacting with it. So to see their granddaughters being like, thank you for this, like that was a big humbling honor for me. So I decided like, why not do this again next year? Next slide, please. Just a quick content warning for the next piece. So Filipino American representation in American culture is really peculiar. Our colonization and US imperialism, which were new back around 1898, were very unpopular here. So to sway opinion, this narrative was invented about the white man's burden of spreading civilization and modernity to the primitive and savage BIPOC of the world, including the Philippines. So we were depicted in the American media with Black phenotypic traits, such as this old magazine cover that called us the new Topsy. And Topsy was a character from Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, who became an established racist trope of, the recently civilized BIPOC savage that still hasn't adjusted and assimilated. Juxtaposed with today, where one of the very few fully fleshed out Filipino American characters in Western media is Mateo Liwanag, who is played by Filipino American actor Nico Santos in NBC's sitcom Superstore, which just wrapped up the series, unfortunately. So that's kind of like the legacy that many of us have had as far as Filipino American representation here in the States. Next slide. So I spent a lot of 2019 covering our more well-known figures and events in history, Filipino American history. So I saw 2020 as an opportunity to acknowledge our more overlooked stories. So while people like Larry Itliong and Philip Vera Cruz are more closely associated with like the Delano grape strikes, I wrote the biography of who's considered the third Filipino in line during the Delano grape strikes, Manong Pete Velasco. There are also other figures that are kind of lost towards more like other facets of American culture, like Robert Lopez, who's Filipino American and is the only double EGOT winner in entertainment history. So the EGOT is winning the Emmy, the Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony, and he's the only person that's ever done it twice. He's responsible for things like Avenue Q on Broadway, as well as the Frozen soundtrack. So he wrote Let It Go. So I apologize, parents. Next slide. So while researching, Google and Google Scholar especially, they work in mysterious ways. If you combine disparate keywords in the search bar like Filipino and Native American history, you can uncover cool things like Esteban Gloria, AKA Stephen Glory, AKA Stephen Redleaf, who was the first Filipino child sent to the infamous Carlisle Indian Industrial School, which was one of many boarding schools that separated Indigenous American children from their tribes as one of America's assimilation through education programs. But rather than return to the Philippines and indoctrinate the islands with American culture and values as intended, Stephen chose solidarity with his fellow classmates. And he joined other former Carlisle alum on a traveling Indian show, which were mostly a form of entertainment for white people. And they were hugely inaccurate, but they were run by Indigenous peoples at least. And while doing this, he learned from and worked with many early 20th century Indigenous activists all across the Americas. So the United States, as well as parts of Southern and Central America. Next slide. So I began 2020's fan posts on October 1st with a self-portrait of myself as a one-day-old. I encouraged everyone to see themselves, their families, and their friends in these stories, because ultimately, Filipino American History Month isn't only about celebrating the famous figures and events, but our own stories as well, which quite often run parallel to the famous ones anyways. So I had the opportunity to make a lot of self-portraits because we're in a pandemic and my roster of sitters was very limited. But it was advantageous because these self-portraits, like this one about racial ambiguity and the racial ambiguity of Filipino-American identity throughout US history, really helped me see myself in Filipino-American history. Like this particular post painted a much more convoluted but ultimately complete sense of self-identity. As well as my own understanding of race as a social construct to see how the racial category of Filipinos in America had evolved from being Indio or natives of an American colony to Malayan to Asian American to now you can just say you're ethnically Filipino in the 2020 US Census. Next slide, please. So these are my parents. This was when they were members of a wedding party before they were even dating each other. They both arrived here through two different immigration and nationality acts. My father from a 1952 INA that allowed citizenship through US military service. So like a lot of other Filipino American dads, like a lot of my friends, they all enrolled in the Navy and through that they gained their citizenship. And my mom, through a 1965 INA, also known as the Hart-Celler Act. And this was a huge immigration program. It had lifted quotas that had severely limited immigration from Asia and Latin America for decades. That was a very major one as far as American immigration history. Both of my parents served as president of our local Filipino American organization back in Connecticut, where I grew up. I was very fortunate to be raised with a strong sense of bayanihan, which is a Filipino concept for like communal spirit. Like you always help out the community. That's where our strength lies. Telling our stories also was very important for my father, and it's probably where I get this urgency to tell our stories from. The next to their photo is from a newspaper article my dad had written about both the parallels and differences of his upbringing in the Philippines with raising my older brother and me here in the States. So if you look at the bottom right, there's a very, very young picture of me with my mom holding me. Next slide, please. So I had assumed that my family's Filipino-American story began with my parents, but while researching the Pensionado Act, which was another assimilation through education program that began in 1903, I learned that several members of the Samonte line, which is my maternal side, became my earliest known Filipino-American ancestors. So my great-grandfather, along with several brothers and cousins, studied at the University of Iowa, and they also spent time in Chicago, not only as students, but they actually found work to do just to earn some extra money. He eventually returned to our homeland as an engineer, and my mom recalls like visiting him and having him show her some of his projects around the city. Next slide. So another amazing gem I uncovered while researching for FAM 2020 was while learning about the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. They were the first Black labor organization to receive a charter in the American Federation of Labor. And their story, which included Filipino-American membership, was not only a great example of like Black and Filipino-American solidarity, but another Samonte, Manong Cipriano, he was a prominent Filipino recruiter for the Brotherhood. It was really cool to learn that. He ultimately settled in Chicago with his wife, and I unfortunately am not sure what happened, if they had children or whatnot. So it's such a recent discovery that I still have to like research that. But at the bottom of this picture I included a footnote mentioning Cipriano by name from an article on interracial and transnational Filipino marriage that was published in the Journal of American Ethnic History. Next slide, please. So continuing on from what I learned in like 2020 with Filipino American History Month, both the lack of sitters still and the fatigue from doing so many self-portraits affected my desire to really open up my sketchbook and continue doing portraiture work. So I'm taking a break from it, and I'm currently focusing on writing instead. So I've really turned these essays into a series called the Words Have Meaning series. It began with what I've noticed were a lot of inconsistent terminologies and language being used in both the Filipino and AAPI communities. So like a lot of Filipino Americans will say things like the Philippines has many different dialects. The actuality is we have many different languages. We have like over 100, one source said no less than 120 known official languages that originate from the Philippines. And that type of terminology, it minimizes and misrepresents the scope and diversity of all of our histories and our identities. So I've decided to create this essay series addressing these issues. Like one includes how the common separation of listing Asian as different from Black and Brown identities erases Black and Brown Asians. And a most recent one is why it's important that race, ethnicity, and nationality are not used interchangeably. So that's the current project that really did stem from the love and passion that I had while working on Filipino American History Month through Instagram. And that is the end of my presentation. So thank you very much again for listening to me speak about my work and allowing me to share my work with you.
Thank you so much, Derrick. Maraming salamat. And if any of you have questions for Derrick, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer your questions in the chat. I'm very pleased to present our next artist, who we've been fortunate to feature in Asian Arts and Culture Center's Asia North exhibit in 2019, and also in our Asia in Maryland exhibit. Sughra Hussainy is trained in traditional Afghan and Islamic styles of art, including miniature paintings, calligraphy, and illumination. From 2011 to 2014, Hussainy attended the Turquoise Mountain Institute in Kabul, Afghanistan, a school that trains artists in traditional Afghan techniques to revive and preserve the cultural heritage of Afghanistan. In 2016, Hussainy was invited to participate in the exhibition Turquoise Mountain, Artists Transforming Afghanistan, at the Smithsonian's Freer-Sackler Gallery, which ran from 2016 to 2017. Through her success in the exhibition and other exhibitions within Afghanistan and in London, Hussainy's work gained notoriety. It was that notoriety, combined with her desire to bring about social change, which put her life in danger. When Hussainy returned to the U.S. in 2017 to participate in closing activities around the Turquoise Mountain exhibition, she received a call telling her to not return home, as it would not be safe. She filed for asylum and has been in the U.S. ever since. Hussainy received her MFA in Community Arts from the Maryland Institute College of Art in 2020. She is a resident artist at Viz Arts in Rockville, Maryland, and teaches online for Viz Arts and the Smithsonian. Please make a warm welcome to Sughra Hussainy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Narisa. Yes, I'm so happy to be part of this program, and then I'm a visual artist and then also a community artist, and then like the same thing that Narisa talk about me. That's my art is like illumination, miniature painting, and then calligraphy. It is traditional art of my country, and then also it is like Islamic art. And then I learned this art in Turquoise Mountain Institute in Kabul, Afghanistan, and then from 2011 until 2014, and then they teach me their traditional way, like the artists, like they was artists like do traditional art long time ago, the same technique they did, and then they teach us like making my own brush, my paper, my pigment from the gems or like other things from the natural. Can you go for the second slide, please? That is like my quote. That's the body need food and then the soul need art. That is, I came with this sentence when I noticed like the art, like how art is important to our life. Because when I was 9 years old, that I lost my father, and then when I was 14 years old, that I lost my mom, and then to be out of without parents, the life was like so difficult, and then I was so sad, and then I had not like a good mood at all and every time, and then I don't want to go talk with people, go outside or like some other party like this thing. And then since that I went to Turquoise Mountain, and then I start making art, and then especially using the color. And then I noticed like this, using the color or like to making art is like change my life, change my mood, and then day by day, and then I become to be a normal person. Can you go the second slide? This is a picture that I had when I came in United States 2016, and then that time I was graduated from Turquoise Mountain, but I was a student in Kabul University. And then they asked me if I can make like some art that they wanted, like I'm talking about Turquoise Mountain Institute. And then they asked me like if I can make like some artwork, and then that artwork be part of this exhibition. This exhibition was like very, very good exhibition. Can you go for a second slide, please? This is the artwork that it was displayed in a Smithsonian Museum in Freer and Sackler, and then it had like so much detail. This is why I put like some picture that you can see like more detail. And then all the color that you saw here is natural, real gold, lapis lazuli, turquoise, indigo, all this thing, that the paper and then everything, the gold, all this is natural. I wanted to talk about like how I making my pigments. The gold was like so hard, I was not able to crash or make it powder. And then I buy gold and then give to the jeweler person, and then they make it powder, and then I add water with Arabic gum, and then using like the color, and then there is like gems, emerald. I crash like it I crash it, and then after that the same way mix with water and Arabic gum. Right now I'm talking about Arabic gum because maybe you know, like most of you know like that gum, but when I was back home, and then the gum also I took from the tree, like something that some of tree have like some thing that it is so sticky. I took those things and then put it on the bottle and then add water, and then it was very, very, very sticky glue. Can you go to the second slide? Yeah, because on that exhibition, when I came in United States, I was the first artist to come here. I came for the opening program, and then it was like, I think it was, sometime I'm thinking it was my luck, or like sometime I'm thinking like it was like my bad luck, that I meet Laura Bush, and then it's like, that time I was super happy, and then it's because I meet a very big person, and then also like I had like so many interview with media, and then all this thing, and then I didn't know like it will change my life, or like it put my life in danger. And then I went back Afghanistan, and then like the second time that I came in United States, it was the same year, but it was 10th of October. And then yeah, during that time that I was back at home, and then like I received many calls from the Taliban that they was not happy what I'm doing, because I'm an active woman. I came in United States, I have a exhibit, and then also I'm working with like, they thought like I'm working with American people. This is why for them I was not a good person, and then they wanted to find me, and then they wanted to kidnap me. Like it was like so close that they kidnapped me, and then like if they kidnapped me, and then like right now I was not alive, but thank God that I saved myself, and then right now I'm alive. And then this is the picture that I create about like that situation, the situation that I was going to back home. I was in the Uber car going to airport, and then like to go to back home Afghanistan, and then I received a call from my brother that please, if you want to be alive, and then like please don't come back. And then I was on the street like this, it is the same situation. It was like horrible situation for me, and then like I had no idea where I should go, because I had no family, no friend, no one here. And then that was like super difficult time for me, but God was with me, and then like I found like some connection until now, that like the life is getting continued. Can you go for the second slide? This is the other two of my artwork that also is like more about my own situation. This one that you see, like the line is on this picture. That is the time that I was 9 years old, and then the Taliban came in power, and then it brings so much big war in Kabul. And then this is me, and it is my brother, that we, because of saving ourselves, and then we went like to hide underground. And then on that day I lost my father. And then also because when the Taliban came in power, and then they closed school for a woman, and then after that I was not able to go to school for 6 years. And then the second artwork that you can see, you are seeing, it is my feeling that I was not able to go to school, and then like how much study was important for me. And then because my father and my mom was not educated, but they appreciate all the time as like we should be educated, and then we should, in future, we should support ourselves or our life through education. And then that is like the artwork that I create because when I was on that time, on that moment. The color that you saw, like the brown color in the behind, it is tea. And then that is the tea, like this artwork I create here. And then like I have a roommate from Kenya, and then like she is drinking black tea, and then this I use that tea, and that is the tea like from Kenya. And then the rose, the flower, the pink color that you saw, it is rose flower that I collected rose flower and then put it on the sun, and then it's get dry, and then after that crashed that one. This green color is emerald, and then like the dress of this lady is a vermilion from India, and then the other color that you saw, it is turquoise. All this color is natural. Next slide, please. This is one of my other artwork that's where I did for my thesis when I was a student at Turquoise Mountain Institute. Like to being a woman, and then like when I grow up, and then I noticed like the woman, man and woman situation. It's like I couldn't see like the equality. All the time man is like higher than a woman, and then the woman all the time it should be at home, or like not going to for enough education like that. I found like this feeling. This is why I thought like I want to like create some artwork that's like woman is not like just object, but man always is thinking about woman like an object. And then I did this artwork in two color, because I wanted to say like this situation is like continue starting from long time ago, and then like it is continue until now, this moment that I am alive. And then that is why I put my portrait, a self-portrait here. And then I forgot to say like here is you can see a man on the horse, and then a woman sitting on the water and then getting bath. And then like this man is like just looking to this woman. And then some poem that I use here also is like when we read or sing a poem, a song, all is like about the beauty of like woman, not like the reality of woman. And then I put this emoji here because I wanted to say like the technology has changed so much our life, but no changes in a woman's life. When I was back at home, I thought like it is just like in my country, like Afghanistan, or like the same Afghanistan country, other country. But when I came here, and then still in United States, I found that like woman is not safe, and then they don't have like their equality to here too. This is two other of my artwork that is also like I create about the value of woman, and then also the equality, man and woman as together can make a complete world. And then this is why I have like unworked, unfinished border here. If we have man and woman together, that time we can see like the complete border. Also, like woman for me, like is like a nature, like it is always is growing. Because of woman we have like this beautiful world, like so many, like I think like human world. If we don't have like a woman, and then like this world will be die, and then will be dry. This is the piece that I created for an exhibition, and then it is displayed in museum in Kabul. And then but also this two of artwork, it was like my president's Hamid Karzai, not like this one that right now is present. Before that one, Hamid Karzai was president. And then like when he saw like this my artwork, and then like make an order, can you make this artwork for me? I say yeah, and then I did it, and then I went, and then I meet my presidents on that time. And then like he asked me, and then said, do you know what I'm doing with your artwork? I say no, I don't know, like maybe you will display this artwork in your office or in your house, I don't know, like that. And then he said like no, I will send this your artwork like a gift for Prince Charles. And then this is why I want to, you need like to make another artwork for me that I need to display in my office. That is why I create this artwork for him. Next slide, please. That is also like my other artwork that right now is displayed in Brookside Garden exhibition and in Silver Spring. And then if you familiar with that area, you can go there to see like the exhibition. There is like 7 other artists artwork displayed there, and then this is also displayed here. You can see more detail when you are going, or like if you are able to go there. That is illumination and miniature painting. And then that is also I create because in my country everything is like possible for a man but not for woman, even like playing music or like singing. And then that is why I say like yeah, if I am a woman, or like woman also is a human, should have like the same equality. And then they should be allowed to do anything that they have, and then they should use their talent or ability. This is also is like another my artwork, that it is calligraphy and illumination, and then all the color that you saw, it is natural. And then inside is like a Rumi poem that say like what is you seek is seeking you. And then I believe so strong on that one, because I was like from that time that I was not able to go to school, the Taliban closed school for women. And then from that time to now, and then like I just like feel thirsty for education. And then when I came here in United States, and then I was not able to complete my bachelor degree. And then that is again, I feel like I'm so thirsty for knowledge. And then like just keep asking my friends, or like searching that I want to like go back to school. And then that is why, and I think God was with me. And then I got a full scholarship from Micah, Maryland Institute College of Art. And then it was 2018, and then I graduated just with my master degree last May, like 2020. That is also like some other artwork that I don't know like how much time that we have. It is the same thing, like all of the color that you saw, it is natural. And then the paper that I'm making is like hand make paper. And then this is also like another poem that I wrote about my own situation. That's like right now, this box that you can see here, it should be on the fit on this in this other box, but it is not there. It is like I bring it out because my situation is like that. The place that I belong, it was Afghanistan, but I'm not there because I'm not safe if I want to be alive, and then this is why I apply for asylum here. And then also I'm in the, above. And then my situation is not clear that I can stay here or no. Yeah, that is also like some other my artwork. And then like this one, the dark blue circle that we called Shamsa, when you saw, and then that is I created when I was at home, and then it was like a beginning of COVID, and then that time in the beginning I feel like so much hopeless, and then everything was like so difficult to just stay at home. And then like when you go outside you cannot see any people, but still, and then I try to like make myself busy with art, and then like that art also is like helped me to not thinking about the situation. Yeah, this is like some of my artwork, and then some of my story that I wanted to share with you. And then yeah, if you have any question, and then I'd be happy to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sughra. Please do, we have time for maybe one question, if anyone has a question to put in the chat. So I think we'll move on. So please do share any questions. I'm sure Sughra would be happy to answer questions in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your beautiful work, and just your perseverance.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
We're so grateful that you're here with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making this opportunity.
Next, I would like to welcome my colleague, Mara Dwyer, who's put together this absolutely amazing virtual tour of our installation in Station North. Take it away, Mara.
Thank you, Nerissa. So we are about to watch a video tour of the visual art exhibit that is in Station North at 6 venues along North Avenue. Thank you so much to Motor House for being a wonderful partner and support on this, and to our 5 other venues, Nancy by Snack, Impact Hub, Joe Squared, the Parkway Theater, and North Avenue Market. You're gonna see documentation of the work hanging in the windows. We wanted to have a way for folks to actually see the artwork up close, knowing with COVID, it isn't exactly the right time to be able to go into galleries and have the crowds that we want and really be able to show the work in the way we would like. So a solution to that was to put it up in windows and have it be accessible to anybody walking down North Avenue. So if you do get a chance, the work will be up until May 15th. Please do visit Station North and take a look at the work in person. But if you can't, we have this video documentation of it. And we'll also get to hear from 7 artists who are in the show and hear more about their work. We will have a art walk in Station North on Friday, May 7th. So if you'd like to come and see the work in person, please join us on Friday, May 7th for an exhibit tour and an opportunity to kind of walk around and look at the work. Okay, I hope you enjoy this short film.
When the Asian Arts and Culture Center and Central Baltimore Partnership launched our first Asian North exhibition and festival in 2019, we never imagined that 2 years later, we would see such a dramatic rise in anti-Asian hate and violence towards the AAPI community. A 1900% rise of hate crimes against Asian Americans, fueled by racist rhetoric from the COVID-19 pandemic. Needless to say, we felt a profound sense of urgency to mount Asia North 2021. This year's art exhibition features the works of 24 Asian and AAPI artists who have cultural roots in China, India, Iran, Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam. They practice their art in the Maryland, D.C., and Virginia region. As in the 2 previous Asia North exhibitions, I did not predetermine an exhibit theme. I did not want to create my own storyline for artists to interpret. I did not want a specific theme or idea to prevent an artist from submitting their work for consideration. Instead, I wanted to be as inclusive as possible to artists' different modes of expression, to all the different stories, ideas, and traditions they wanted to share through their works. This year's diverse field of artists tell their stories of family traditions, celebrating and exploring one's roots, women's empowerment, responses to the pandemic, xenophobia, and the global climate crisis, coping with isolation and depression, the merging of Eastern and Western aesthetics, and self-expressions through contemporary art practices. There are countless opportunities for exhibit viewers to make their own connections and also to step out of their comfort zone to discover something new. As a proud member of the AAPI community, the Filipino American community, and as a Baltimore native, I'm grateful and humbled by this opportunity, and especially at this moment, to provide a platform for these artists to demonstrate their creativity and perseverance. Throughout the physical art installation in Station North, you will find posters highlighting the landmarks and history of Baltimore's Koreatown. Since the Asian Arts and Culture Center first started conceptualizing the Asian North Project back in April 2017, AA and CC Director Joanna Pecori conducted research in Baltimore's Korean community. Dr. Pecori's research revealed a strong connection between Towson University and the Korean community. A timeline presenting the historical milestones from 1965 to 2018 of this Baltimore Koreatown Towson University connection is on display at North Avenue Market. Special thanks to those who assisted Dr. Pecori with the research between 2017 and 2019, including Michelle Lee, Ki-chan Park, Yang Yeonji, Ok-young Lee, Go-yoon Kang, and Chelsea Hollian.
Hi, my name is Gloria Singh Fisher. I am a watercolor artist residing in Maryland, and I have been seriously painting for the last 5 years. And I am thrilled and very excited to be part of this year's Asian North 2021, one of the participating artists. I'm just so excited. I submitted paintings that are about food, specific Asian vegetables and fruit. And so, you know, part of the thinking about how to put my submission together was, you know, thinking about myself. I immigrated to the United States when I was 10. And so there's always this cross culture at home and outside of your house. At home, we speak, you know, Taiwanese. You step out, it's English is spoken. And so thinking about these vegetables that you find in supermarket now, there are, you know, they all have Asian names. The importance about food in Asian culture is, like, it's just big. Everything revolves, you know, you talk about, did you have a good time? People will say, oh, I had a great time. The food was great. It's always revolves around food. And I always remember my mom talked about her wedding banquet and the fact that there's a beggar's table. And so it allows anybody to come inside and celebrate this nuptial. And so it's this open invitation for celebration. And, you know, a typical Chinese greeting is really, have you eaten? And so it's that, it's, you know, it's, again, it's about food. The birth, you know, important event in your life, the birth of your child, it's the naming of your child. You throw a big red egg party, and, you know, in the old days, they waited till 1 year. Now it's 1 month, but it's still, it's a banquet, and it's about food. The way I started painting my watercolor is actually from my dad. And my mom taught me how to draw, but my dad loves watercolor. And he had a great appreciation for Chinese character writing, the calligraphy. And so when you do the calligraphy, you have the brush on Indian ink and on paper. And so this is how I approach my art. So I don't sketch it out. There's no pencil sketch. It is a homage back to my culture, where I take the watercolor brush, I dip it in the watercolor ink, and just start on the paper. And I tend to I paint on hot press paper. And what the hot press paper does, it shows up all the blotches on the paint, the watercolor paint. And so if you look at the painting, A Quick Market Trip, and you look at the plastic bag where all these Asian eggplants are coming out of, all these blotches basically denotes the plastic bag. And then one of the things I also do in my painting is I tend to lift out the hard edges. And the best demonstration of this is the Chinese cabbage. So the Chinese cabbage, if you on the left side, I believe on the leaf, it's completely, the edges are completely left out. So the whites of the background becomes part of the painting. And it also allowed the viewer to finish off the edges and makes the painting more interesting.
My name is Hadrian Mendoza. I'm a ceramic artist born in the Philippines and currently residing in Virginia. And I'm part of the Asia North 2021 exhibition in Baltimore. The three pieces I chose for this exhibition are a piece called Bloom, a piece called Punk Rock, and a vase titled Cactus. For Bloom, it was a coil-built sculpture, basically handmade off the potter's wheel. And this one was fired in a wood kiln, where the cactus vase and the punk rock sculpture were both made from the potter's wheel with several pieces and assembled to create a sculpture. The punk rock sculpture was made in 2015. And this piece, to me, I was making a lot of busts at the time from different cultures, and most of the sculptures I made were a front view. So I decided to move into the profile. And the reason why I went into this punk rock theme was it's kind of like I'm going against the grain, how punk rock was going against the grain of music at the time. And it was like a rebellion. Being Asian in this country is kind of being in rebellion, whether you like it or not. I've experienced racism throughout my life, from first grade up to the past year, and it's always going against the grain. And that's what punk rock signifies for me. The cactus vase, on the other hand, is I work a lot with the Japanese art of Ikebana, and I work with a lot of Ikebana artists in the DC area. And it's a vase with several openings in it where artists can use their flowers and plants to make art out of my art. So it's more of when I created that piece, it's basically two large platters that I put together and put it on some type of stand made of clay and put holes in it, which are strategically placed, keeping in mind how an Ikebana artist would want to work with my vase. And in the center of the vase, there's a white, circular white shape. And basically I took the finished piece and I took porcelain clay and just threw it across the room and splashed it against the piece, kind of like cleansing of the hard, sharp thorns of a cactus. The last piece I made was called Bloom, and this is an important piece for me because it was the first piece I made when the US went into a lockdown back in March of 2020. And to me, the piece starts with one base and separates into 4 sections and comes back together at the top. And the inspiration is from the birds of paradise flower, which are found in the tropics. And to me, it's about, despite being locked down and surrounded by this virus, you have to bloom, and it's about life.
Hi, my name is Marlo Delara. I am an artist, invited artist for the Asia North 2021 exhibition this year. I work with sound and performance. I tend to call it also visual distraction or experimental film. The pieces that I did was a series for the Asia North exhibition. It's called Pandemic Visual Scores, or rather Pandemic Scores. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, and Stage 4. And what it is a commentary or an editorializing through sound alone, based on the source material of the reports of Asian hate crime, the climate of xenophobia and anxiety as it's mounting throughout over 2020 to 2021. And how we as marginalized people identify with and vacillate between the different areas of interacting with culture. And so this was to isolate it to a sound, and what would it sound like if we could actually close out certain senses so that we were able to actually be present, because oftentimes I feel the saturation is what we're getting when we're online these days. And of course, we're relying online because we're not having actual face interactions. So I guess in a way, I was subtracting humanity to put back in humanity. What my understanding of the water element as in 5-element acupuncture is this, the uncontrollability of it. And the way that water can be hard upon contact, but you can also submerge oneself and one can be immersed in it. But at the same time, one can never tell water what to do. And this is the way that I feel like media consumption is occurring, because we're caught up in the waves, and but we're also nourished by it because we need water to exist. So in some ways, it's kind of like our social water, right? Like we need to not get dehydrated because we need to feel part of society. But at the same time, you cannot tell an ocean to be like, I need you to be low tide right now. And we all need low tide right now. Existing in this medium also has constantly put us in this stimulated hyper-vigilant state. And so that's how I kind of ground it through this appreciation of water, as far as composition goes, and as far as like latching it onto what I feel like we're constantly in this, like almost a tsunami of reports and opinions and images and creative works as well.
Hey everybody, my name is Anderson Wolf. I'm a visual artist based in Baltimore. I work in traditional and digital mediums. This year, I'm presenting several ongoing paintings that are abstract landscape that more kind of expressing my emotions as a Asian immigrants living in the US for almost like a decade in a more abstract way. When you see a figurative work, you see a human face, you see an image of a human, I think that the audience just very automatically feels like entitled or confident or familiar to read into it and see, oh, that's the emotions, I know, that's the message from the painting versus landscape or abstract. It's just more what do you say, like blur in terms of that. So I found that very interesting. That's how I started in the paintings in this series, and it's still ongoing. And another big reason behind this series is the subject of solitude. Is I think largely because of my own life experience. I think I grew up in China, and I moved to US 10 years ago for school, and I'm a queer artist, and just all of this, I feel like just being solitude is just such a common and familiar thing or feelings in my life, especially after I start to practice art full time, because you just spend more a long time in your studio doing work instead of when I was working as a designer. You're still in the office, you talk to people or clients or whatever. So so I think that's just what interests me, to explore that kind of absence in the form of landscape. I just feel like the more time I spend with myself on paintings and working in my studio, I just start to appreciate more and more about the alone time. And to the point now, I just feel like it's a great way, and sometimes I think it's the only way to reflect on yourself and reflect on your life. Basically, most of the images you see from the paintings are from my own actual experience, either a place I visited a long time ago or recently, or in a regular base, or just in a trip or site visit when I was a designer. The 5 paintings you see in the exhibition are I think 3 of them are from my visit in Versailles in France, and one is in Jordan Hill Park, actually in Baltimore. I bike past it all the time, and another one is actually in my neighborhood, Reservoir Hill. So it's like a mixture of like a daily familiar places and like a more exciting and well-known places, on a very short encounter. I think just when I started add more paint, add more layers and colors, the form a lot of times just appear by themselves.
Hi, my name is Nikita Yogaraj. I am an Indian American artist and illustrator based in Baltimore. These portraits are part of a larger series of women of color creatives that I put together over the last couple of years. I grew up reading fiction, and I often used it to help me process my emotions. And so I often highlighted women writers in the series. So one of them is of Arundhati Roy, who is an Indian fiction and nonfiction writer. She's most known for her novel, The God of Small Things, and most recently, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. But she also has a lot of nonfiction writing, like the book, Capitalism, A Ghost Story. And she often speaks out against imperialism. With the quote that I've highlighted there, it's part of her larger approach to responding to all the things that activists and people have done to imagine another world. And this is something that I am identifying with a lot right now, where currently there are people doing the work to imagine and fight for a world where policing and incarceration is unnecessary because community investment is prioritized and basic needs are met. Similarly, Jhumpa Lahiri is an Indian American writer. And if you've read her novels and short stories, one thing that I pull out of a lot of them is like this thread of loneliness throughout her books that can come with being a hyphenated American, like Indian American or Asian American. And I chose to highlight this quote in this moment because I see it as something that can convey the plight of seekers of asylum in the current context of Central and South Americans seeking asylum in the US. To me, it's a quote that makes that more visceral, to imagine that you have a family and you are in a home in a situation where there's nowhere left to go for you except for you to escape, for your family to thrive or even just survive. And I believe that Americans, and specifically descendants of immigrants, should be able to empathize with that journey and use it to fuel their support of the work of uplifting asylum seekers. Another one where I have this piece showing that I call Banana Flower Sensors, part of a larger series as well, where I draw similarities between plant anatomy and parts of women and feminine bodies that are often judged by how desirable or undesirable they are, like body hair and nipples. In this one specifically, I wanted to highlight and encourage people to think about the fact that nipples and pubic hair are both very functional parts of women's bodies. Nipples their role is to feed children, like newborn children, and pubic hair technically is something that is supposed to protect the skin around your vagina or genitals, especially during sex. But they're so often and so easily just sexualized as part of a larger view of women's bodies and then censored in public. And so I wanted to kind of invite people to think about them differently in that way.
My name is Linda Kato, and my middle name is Yuriko. I'm a third generation American of Japanese ancestry and grew up in California, but I'm also a Catholic nun of the Religious of the Sacred Heart Order, which is an international order, very progressive, and our mission is very much dedicated to education and the promotion of social justice, and with a particular concern for women and girls. I specialize in making portrait dolls of women who've made significant impacts in history around the globe and over the centuries, even the millennia, particularly because I'm interested in making this kind of information about women and their contributions to society better known. I chose these Shandok, Queen of Shilla in Korea, and Empress Wuzechan of China, and Empress Nur Jahan of the Mughal dynasty in South Asia, specifically for this exhibition, obviously because it's about Asia, and Asians and Asian Americans. So I can just say a few words about each woman. Shandok was born in 595 in the Common Era and died in 647 Common Era. She was the only ruling queen of Korea in her own right. And at that point in history, the Korean Peninsula was divided into 3 separate kingdoms, and Shilla was one of them. She was just loved by her people. Which is extraordinary, because often women who rule in their own right in Asia are vilified, as these demon women and so forth. She's one that comes out with a very beautiful reputation. And she did a lot to lower taxes, for example, for the peasantry and for the merchants, and to provide public support programs for indigent elderly and women and widows and orphans. And she brought from China Buddhism to the Korean Peninsula for the first time, and is very highly honored for that. And so her doll, I dressed her in a traditional Korean hanbok, which is the traditional gown of Korea, but in the time of Shilla. And she wears the traditional crown of the kings of that period to show her legitimacy to the throne, as well as the military belt, and they were all these are all handmade and of silk. The crowns and the other jewels are made of semi-precious jade-like stones, because jade was the primary gemstone of the time. The second doll I have is Empress Wuzechan. And she was the Empress of China, again in her own right, the only one in China. And by that I mean that they weren't regent, for example, for a child emperor or for an ailing emperor. And so she lived from 624 to 705 Common Era. And this was during the Tang Dynasty, which the Chinese revere as one of their greatest dynasties. It was so cosmopolitan, incredible trade, the Silk Roads, and it's expanded all the way from, northeast and much into Southeast China, Central Asia. And so in many ways, it outstripped the Roman Empire, which was its contemporary in the West in terms of its accomplishments and its wealth and power. So she was the empress at the height of its power, and was, so that's an extraordinary thing for a woman to be able to do that. She was an astute political and military leader. Again, she expanded this already vast empire way into Afghanistan and other parts of Central Asia. And again, as I said, Korean Peninsula, Southeast Asia. Her biggest accomplishment, which is she instituted the civil service exam as a way of selecting candidates for the bureaucracy, the government bureaucracy. And this opened up the bureaucracy to anyone, not just nobility, but to any peasant, as long as they passed the exam. And so, you hear sometimes about how in some North Asian cultures that education is so important. Well, it kind of goes back to this particular tradition, because the whole villages would get together and pool their resources and support the education of a peasant son who was promising, and all the benefits of him passing the exam and becoming a bureaucrat would accrue to the village as well. And so this was incredible way of democratization, and no other government around the world has had that until the 19th century, including the West. So it's really, she was just visionary, And the sad thing was that, of course, the aristocrats and the Confucian scholars hated her for that, because it took away their, hegemony over the government. And so they vilified her over the centuries, and she's portrayed as this demon woman and, everything. And I think it's only been the last 20 years that her reputation by feminist scholars in China and overseas has revived and resurrected her and really appreciated her accomplishments. The final one is Nur Jahan, who lived in the 16th century, 1577 to 645 Common Era. She was the case where she was the regent for her husband, who was really chronically ill most of his life, and she again ruled the Mughal Empire really at its peak, and kept it at its peak for several generations more. She was really, really critical for this. She was, even her enemies thought of her as very politically astute, charismatic, very brave. Also, she was an architect in her own right, and her innovative use of marble in various public buildings that she created were copied by her stepson, who in the legendary Taj Mahal. So a lot of those imagery and so forth reflect her creations. Her doll wears a replica of the Mughal court fashion, and she wears not just one, but two peshwas. They're called they're robes, they're high-waisted robes, and one's made of this very elaborate brocade, and another is of this of peach sequined lace. And her she wears underneath it, you don't see it, but she wears the full this midriff barring choli and matching flared pajama pants of silk taffeta, and they're all embroidered, So if you had a chance to look up, you can see all this. I make sure everything is just exact replica, and her turban is a replica of what she's shown wearing in a portrait, And and so those are the three characters, but phenomenal women, and as I said, very rare. Hard to find them in Asian history in the pre-modern world, unfortunately. And they're so talented. How many more women, were wasted, in terms of their talents? I think arts in general offer a language that communicates across barriers of gender, race, ethnicity, ideology, values, everything. And I try to use it as sort of a way of softening up and reducing the tension before bringing to topics that are a little bit, harder to for some people to take. And for example, I have a doll of one of the slaves that my own order had. You know, we used slave labor when they came to the U.S. in the South. And it's a terrible story. But I remember at the Library of Congress earlier last year, we did a presentation for Black History Month and at the Library of Congress with a group of doll artists. And mine presented her doll. And then I did a presentation on my order's history of using enslaved labor and of the Catholic Church's history in the United States as well. And so there was these conversations about race and church and so forth. And I think I mean, it's a tough topic. I mean, I was, really nervous talking about it myself, but especially it was a predominantly African-American audience. So I didn't know what they would say to me, but it was just a way you could bring these topics to conversations, and I'm planning to use Asian dolls next month for a presentation in Montgomery County on anti-Asian racism and violence, but it's a way of sort of getting to that topic through some of these characters, which will include some Asian American heroines as well.
The title sounds like a set of choreography. How did you land on these 3 words? In your production notes, you say, in this project, we let each artist express their own self and put in their own vision and feeling for how they reacted to the given moment by only getting parts of communication and information. You also focus on how the photographer was invited to take photos of an improvised performance with no prior context, leaving his vision of how things are perceived. How does this formal choice for each person to create a unique individual piece of artwork based on an incomplete idea from a previous collaborator mimic the given moment of our pandemic? What about this time inspired this process?
To be told I am beautiful lights tiny matches in my chest, one by one.
Finally, you say, we engaged in trust and reaction to come to a final collective understanding. What was the collective understanding?
To be told I am beautiful lights tiny matches in my chest, one by one, set ablaze in the reflection of your eyes and punctuated with quiet pauses, measured in breaths when you lean closer to me. I cannot move my hands to hold you, a feeling that overwhelms the overwhelming one, love that cannot be captured, only attempted to explain.
Thank you so much, Mara, for that wonderful tour and for your work in video interviewing the artists. And it was just great to hear the artists speak about their works and so engaged in all the really different and fascinating stories. And it was just fantastic. Thank you so much for your work on that. And again, you know, there are 24 artists' works in this show, so I hope you go see the physical installation down in Station North. Thank you again to Central Baltimore Partnership for helping to make this happen, and all the venues who let us activate their windows with these amazing works of art. And also do see, if you can't make it to Station North, do check out the exhibit online at towson.edu/asianorth, and there's a link to the exhibition there, and we've also put the link in the chat. Our next artist for Asia North 2021 is Ambika Ramsundar. Ambika has been fascinated with henna for a very long time. She remembers seeing pictures of her drawing as a child and then getting in trouble with her mom many times for using markers to draw on her hands. Years later, she made her mom proud by becoming a professional henna artist, with the correct tools, of course. Ambika is originally from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago to be exact, an island with a rich cultural heritage that has played a very important role in Ambika's creative outlook. Ambika is a high school chemistry teacher by profession and has been teaching in Baltimore City for the past 14 years. She uses henna as a form of self-care and a distraction from the daily demands of her job. Henna has brought many wonderful experiences to her, and she would thoroughly enjoy sharing some of them with you, along with some other information on henna. So, Asia North 2021 welcomes Ambika Ramsundar.
Thank you, Narissa. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm here today to give a brief presentation on the henna art form. I'm going to touch a little bit of history, some background information, and then I'm going to do a demo. And while I'm doing the demo, it's a lot of information to go over. So I encourage everyone participating to ask questions. And I'm going to try my best to answer those questions as I do the demonstration. Next slide. So we're going to cover background, some tradition, and then the demo is going to be the last part of it. I'm going to try to spend most of my time on the demo and answering questions. And for the next few slides, we're going to go through a little bit of information on henna. So what is henna? Henna is the leaf of a plant that's ground into a powder, and that powder is used as the medium for making temporary body tattoos on the skin. And this plant is typically grown in warm countries or warm areas. And the leaves have a tendency to secrete or give off a kind of a dye or a stain that when it comes in contact with the skin, it produces a beautiful body art that lasts for about 2 weeks if it's cared for properly. So we have some general information, the botanical name, common names. So the molecules in henna, the leaves itself, the lawsone molecules are the ones that are that bind to proteins. And when it comes in contact with your skin or any kind of skin. It could be animal skin. It doesn't have to be like just regular human bodies. I've seen artists do work on like a drum skin, and it stains beautifully there. It's used for fingernails, for hair, silk, wool, leather, and different different things can be dyed with it. Next slide. So the leaves of the plant, the leaves are dried and then they're ground into the powder. So when I first started this henna journey some years ago, my first interaction with a henna cone was the ones that you find at the Indian store. Now, when I first started this, I was in college. I didn't know what an actual henna cone felt like or what it looked like. So I went to the Indian store, found a henna cone, and that was my first introduction. It wasn't the best introduction to henna because the henna paste at the Indian store, those cones have been sitting for a long time. They've added chemicals to extend the shelf life. I didn't know all this stuff. I had to learn this as I go along. So when I first started to mix my own henna paste using organic henna powder, we didn't have a fine sift. So when you grind the leaves of a plant, for those of us that are cooks and we know about turmeric powder and curry powder, it has that same kind of texture. But henna requires, we require henna powder to be very, very finely sifted so that you get a nice flowing paste. And you know, that's half of the journey to getting a beautiful design. So now you have henna powder that is very well processed. It's 5 times sifted, many times sifted. And there are so many markets out there, so many vendors or websites or sellers, retailers that sell quality ingredients so that you can get like good henna powder. Of course, I still don't recommend buying henna powder at a grocery store or Indian grocery store because it doesn't rotate as much. So the chance of it being not good quality is very high. Next slide. Henna has some medicinal uses. So it's used as a coagulator for open wounds. It soothes burns. It heals or helps or soothes eczema. The third bullet, traditionally done on palms, as there are a lot of nerve endings, and this helps you to relax. So a little bit of history about the uses of henna. So no one culture really can claim that they've discovered henna body art or the use of henna because different regions, different places use it for different reasons. So in weddings and for bridal adornment, henna is typically applied to the palms of the hand so that the bride relaxes and can, you know, be a little bit less stressed for a wedding. That is just one aspect of henna, in addition to it being beautiful and it making a bride look like a bride. It's also used for ringworm and athlete's foot and all these different uses. Next slide. So going back to the history, over 5,000 years ago, you have India, Africa, and the Middle East being like parts of a big part of henna history. So in India, it was used as decorative adornment. In Africa and Middle Eastern countries, in the Middle East, adornment as well as counteracting the high temperatures. So in Africa and the Middle East, there's such high temperatures that henna is applied to the hands and the soles of the feet because it acts as a natural coolant and it brings down the body temperature. So to counteract these sweltering heat waves, people in those continents would apply it to their bodies to do that. Next slide. And I'm sorry if I'm rushing. We're just trying to get everything done with the limited time. So henna styles. So when it comes to adornment, you have different regions having different styles or different techniques that's used. In certain parts of like Africa, you have bolder designs being used. In the Middle East, you have more geometric designs. Pakistan, Afghanistan, you have more Arabic or floral flowing designs. And India has a type of a traditional looking design where it incorporates a lot of motifs or symbolism into the henna designs. So the word henna itself is something that's it has a celebratory meaning to it. So when henna is used in a function, it's always used in a positive or a joyous way. So you'll find henna at a lot of weddings, birth ceremonies, birthdays, birth ceremonies meaning for pregnant women, engagements, religious celebrations, anything that's celebratory, you would find henna being used there. Next slide. So different regions, different slides. So on the very left, you have an African bride. If you look at the design on her hand, they are very, very bold and it looks darker. It's black henna. So what I do know, some African countries prefer the use of black henna and they have very bolder designs being done. You have a Muslim bride and then you have an Indian, a traditional Indian bride. These are the ones that we normally, like when someone is speaking about henna, you would think about an Indian wedding or a Muslim wedding, but it is very, very popular in African weddings as well. Next slide. So a lot of one popular question I get asked when I'm doing henna is, does the drawing have any meaning? What is the meaning behind henna? Does it mean anything? So when I do a bridal design, I ask my clients if they would like to have certain things incorporated into the design based on either their story about meeting their fiance or something that they like, their religion, anything they want to incorporate to make the design a little bit personal to them. The one thing that I know about religious in Hinduism, I am a Hindu, and in Hinduism, we don't do any god designs below the navel of the body. We do, sometimes you want like a Ganesha on your hands or a Om symbol on your hands or your arm or your upper back, but we don't put god designs on the lower part of the body. Animals are used, elephants, peacocks, parrots are pretty popular. In Islam, they don't do faces at all. So they just stick to florals and a lot of Arabic themed henna. So the symbolism is all up to the individual and what they want to put into their design. On a regular, not necessarily brides, like I have regular clients who come and they ask for lotuses because a lot of people like lotuses and the symbolism behind it. And they do it just for personal belief and personal reasons or motivation or self-care. Next slide. All right, so I'm gonna switch before I do that, the application. So this is a henna cone right here. In this, I have a mix of this paste. My paste, and every artist has their own special mix or what they like to use. I like to keep it simple. I use henna powder, water, some sugar, and an essential oil. An essential oil is necessary because the essential oil is what's used to activate the dye release in the henna paste, and it's what produces a nice dark stain. Henna would stain without an essential oil, but the stain would not be as dark and it would not last as long as it will with the essential oil. Next slide. So the plastic that I use for the cone is the same thing as floral wrap or that wrap that you get when you buy flowers at the market. and I just use regular tape. The plastic is cut into squares. Some people prefer triangles. It's all a preference. And it's rolled into cones that look like this image right here. And these are the cones that are filled and are used to apply the henna design. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to switch to the demonstration. And while we do the demonstration, I'm going to be answering some questions.
Please do put your questions in the chat for Ambika, and I will read them out to her while she is doing the demonstration, and she'll answer them as we ask your questions.
Okay. So on my hand, this right here, this is a design that was done on Thursday. So henna tends to take about 24 to 48 hours to darken. So I put this on my hand so that I could show you what it looked like after it's stained and on the skin.
And Ambika, I'll read to you some of these comments that are coming in now.
Sure.
Ken Sway says, "This is so interesting. I've been to so many weddings where there's henna all over. Learning about this is incredible." And Nancy Moe says, "Thank you for teaching me about henna."
You're welcome. I'm sorry it's a little bit rushed, but I wanted to cover like most of the basics and a little bit more before getting into the demonstration.
How many hours will you spend on a bridal henna?
So bridal henna, it depends on how much the bride is getting. So if it's a bridal henna up to the elbows, which is a typical, which is like the most common amount, that takes about 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. So I take about 1.5 hours per side for the palms, and then the back of the hands take about 1 hour. So about 4 to 5 hours.
Joanna is asking, can you tell us about the design you're making now?
So when I start working on a design, I look at the my client's hands, and I just kind of come up with an idea. I get an idea of where I want to start. So I'm just doing like a central, since it's a quick demonstration, I'm doing a central motif. This is known as a mandala. And then I'm just going to add a couple embellishments to it to make it look a little bit bigger and a little bit fuller and prettier. It starts with a simple flower, and then we kind of make it bigger. As I add the humps around it, I make the design a little bit bigger.
Ken is commenting, "I've always marveled at the patience it takes to do this by the artist and the person who is being painted on. One of the weddings, any person could sit and get a simple design done. Couldn't believe how long the artist worked in that period, and everything looked so detailed, similar to what you're creating now."
Yeah, so in the henna industry, or like in the wedding industry, I should say, not really henna industry, time is money. So a client would want the most amount of designs done in the least possible time. So you kind of train, as a henna artist, you kind of train yourself to to create that or to fit that mold, because the faster you are, the more hands you can get through, the less money a client has to spend to book you for hours and hours at end. So that's why we work with a lot of speed most times to get through an event.
Asian North artist Linda Kato is asking, how far in advance of an event should the person get this done?
So for a bride, I recommend at least 2 days in advance because of the staining process. So the henna looks its best 48 hours after it's applied. So we try to like put them in, lead them into that direction with booking. So for like a Saturday wedding, I recommend Wednesday or Thursday for ideal application. A day before is kind of pushing it. You wouldn't get a bright stain by doing it the day before.
Asian North artist Anu Das says, amazing. Your designs are so delicate and detailed.
Thank you. So this comes with a lot of practice. One thing I'm known for at school, when I'm at school and staff meetings, all my agendas or any paper that it's given to me, it always has a doodle on it. So my mind is always working like this because this is my happy place. So if a meeting is boring or I don't want to be there, I start doodling and I move to a different place in my mind. So it's a lot of practice you put into the craft.
Melanie Lee is asking, can you remove a misstroke? Can an entire design be removed before it naturally goes away with time?
What do you mean by can an entire design be removed?
Oh, without removing the entire design, or
like a mistake to fix a
mistake. Fix a mistake. How do you fix a mistake?
So if I make a mistake, you wouldn't even know because I made the mistake and I keep moving. I don't stop unless it's a smudge where, like I've had an issue, an incident where the cone fell onto the design, then that's like an obvious mistake. But I've made a mistake here already. You wouldn't tell because I'm able to cover it up before anybody catches it.
That's amazing.
If you were paying attention closely, you would have seen it, but.
You shouldn't have told us anything that you made a mistake.
So now I have you guys looking for a mistake.
Well, thank you, Ambika. I think we're out of time, but you've done such an amazing job in such a short period of time. So thank you so much for sharing your art with us.
And for your kind comments, and for everyone who asked a question. I appreciate you participating with me. Thank you very much, everyone.
Our next artist is Jorgelina Lopez. La Loupe design has its origins in Argentina, where Jorgelina Lopez, a textile designer, started exploring fiber as a tri-dimensional medium at her studio in Buenos Aires, where she also taught different textile workshops. In 2016, she relocated to Baltimore and officially launched her first lighting collection in collaboration with her partner, Marco Duenas, a wood and cross-disciplinary artist. The name La Loupe, from the French word loupe, meaning magnifying glass, arises from the idea of observation and discovery. Influenced both by Japanese and mid-century design, La Loupe incorporates different textile techniques, such as printing, dyeing, and weaving with traditional woodworking. Along with the handcrafted lighting collections, La Loupe also creates wall art and home decor accessories, exploring the connection between contemporary design and traditional crafts, finding inspiration in geometric patterns and forms in nature. Asia North 2021 welcomes Jorgelina Lopez.
Thank you, everyone, to be here. This is amazing, all the talented artists, all the amazing stories. Thank you for the Asian Arts and Culture Center for the invitation to be part of this event, for the opportunity to give me the opportunity to show my work. My name is Jorgelina. I'm a textile designer from Argentina, and I'm the owner of La Loupe Design, and I have been here in Baltimore since 2016. And despite the challenges of coming to a new country last year with the situation of the COVID, I have found in Baltimore an amazing and supportive and diverse community of artists and people. So I'm very grateful and happy to be here today showing my work with you. I'm going to be showing the process behind my collections and the influence of two traditional Japanese techniques that I use in the lamps that you can see in my collection. So my current work, as she mentioned, Nerissa mentioned, is in the design of handcraft lighting home decor objects, exploring the connection between traditional craft and contemporary design. So I'm working in collaboration with my husband, Marco Dueñas, and you can see, you can put the video, Maura, you can put the video when I tell you to. I'm gonna do a small, brief introduction before the video. So I was saying, I work in collaboration with my husband, Marco Dueñas, and he's a woodworker and an artist as well. And he incorporates all the wood pieces that you see in the collection. So in my career as a textile designer, I have always focused mostly in the craft aspect of textiles and their handmade process. So I have been exploring and investigating and learning all the different traditional textile crafts and techniques. And I have always explored and researched for the different approaches of the same techniques we find all around the world. So in this search of this different handmade process of making textiles, I fell in love with the beautiful Japanese textiles and the unique approach. And I feel a strong admiration for their culture and traditional craft. And it has been one of my major influence in my last few years. And you can see it reflected in some of my last collections. So after I graduated from the University of Architecture and Design in Buenos Aires, I started designing under the name La Loupe. And Nerissa was telling, La Loupe means magnified glass. So the name La Loupe arises from this idea of observation and curiosity that I always have. So La Loupe represents this object that allow me to look closer and to observe and discover the world around me. So I'm very happy of the point of my career that I am as a designer. And I have found in La Loupe a place that I can create, express myself through my designs, creating with my hands and connecting with other cultures and learning from them through their traditional craft. And this is one of my main inspiration in the process of creating and designing, working with my hands and learning from other traditional crafts. So a great part of my work aims to open a conversation with diverse communities, learning from them, working with other people's perspective. So this is a brief introduction of my journey as a textile designer and my approach as a textile as a designer in general. So now I'm gonna be showing a video where I'm gonna show the two main traditional Japanese that are influencing my work. So you can put the video. Origami means folding paper, and even that's not the material I use for my lamps. I use linen. That's how I start the process of designing the different lamps that you see in this collection. So first, I work with paper and I start playing around in a small scale. I try different patterns and different variations to see how the flat surface behave after it's folded. So this technique is very interesting. You can work with many basic type of folds to create different results. So understanding them is a very important part of the design process of each lamp. So in the beginning, the exploration is playing around with different patterns of the origami and also playing with different variations, probably of the same design. So I work, as I mentioned, I work with paper in a small scale, and then I transfer the prototype in a bigger scale. So this is a very, very interesting technique to work with. I really love it. And it took me a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice and patience to get familiar with this technique. So the amazing thing about this is the three-dimensional form created. It doesn't have any inner structure. It's just the folded pattern. If that's what made this three-dimensional shape. So I use technology to transfer the origami pattern to my computer. So this is a time lapse of me doing the lamp. So as I mentioned before, I use linen. So what I'm doing here, I'm getting the linen, the fabric ready to apply the inner lining. This inner lining is known as styrene and is the same material used for the inside of many lampshades, so you may be familiar with it. So what I do, I score the creases of the origami pattern in the inner lining with the machine that you can see behind me. So after it's the score, I apply the inner lining into the fabric, and then I fold it together. So I kind of combine this combination of technology with hand folded. So you see here, I'm getting ready to fold the lamp. So the scores are already in the inner lining, the scores of the origami. So it's easier to fold the lamp. So I use linen with styrene, so I don't use paper for the actual lamp. So after it's folded, I put together the lamp, and as you can see, I'm closing the lamp. And as I mentioned, the lamp doesn't have any inner structure inside. Just closing the bottom and the top of the lamp, it was make this beautiful three-dimensional structure. So for me, this is an amazing technique to work with, and I never get tired of exploring this tool. So I keep creating a new design, and this is a collection that is in constant growing. So before going to the second video where I show another traditional Japanese that is influencing this collection, I want to mention I want to talk a little bit about behind the concept of this collection. So these two techniques, origami and shibori, they work with the same very interesting concept of working with a folded flat two-dimensional surface to create a three-dimensional form. And in the case of origami, and in the case of shibori, to create a shade resist pattern that you can see in the fabric. So shibori is another Japanese textile technique that emphasizes in the action of preparing the fabric. So we can fold the fabric to press it, we can stitch it, we can tie the fabric, we can bind the fabric. So you may be familiar with the term tie-dye. Shibori refers to that, but with the Japanese shibori, there is a more complex and sophisticated patterns that you can see in their beautiful textiles. So we can go to the video, the second video, the shibori. So there are different type of shibori. The different type of shibori depend on the action we use in the fabric. So we can fold the fabric, we can stitch it, we can bind it or we can tie it. And after we dye it, when we open the fabric, we can see the pattern. So after I'm getting familiar with this new technique also that I was exploring, I really was interested in this technique that combined pleating with biting. So the first step is I pleat the fabric, and then I wrap the fabric around a pole, and then I tie it with that thread. So after it's dyed, you can see the beautiful pattern that the thread create crossing the stripes. I just fell in love with these beautiful details. I feel like each piece I made with jewelry is a small piece of art. So I applied this fabric to the lamps that you see here. And these pieces, the first pieces, I use synthetic dye, but I always wanted to get into the process of natural dye. So last summer, I found this natural dye garden right here in Baltimore City that is led by Kenya Miles and Rosa Tusi Chang, where they grow and harvest natural indigo and other dye plants. So in the summer, Kenya and I start experimenting, combining origami and the process of dye resist. So we can combine the origami and shibori together and create this. And then we dye with their locally grown indigo to create a limited edition of these new lamps that you can see here. So I really love working with these two techniques, and I keep learning and I keep exploring. My work is in constant exploration and learning, especially Japanese techniques, not only textile techniques, but crafts in general. I really, like I say, I feel a strong admiration to their culture, their traditional craft. So working with my hands, exploring all this handmade process of creating different textiles inspire me and connect me with other people and the community. And this is the part of my work that I'm most is more gratitude. I'm very, very grateful to work to do what I love, just working with traditional craft and the materials and people. So I'm very happy that I found also this place, the garden, the natural garden right here in Baltimore. I'm working with them and have the opportunity to learn the process of natural dye with indigo, but not only just the dyeing process, but just from planting the seed to the growing, the harvest, and the extraction of the indigo. So the garden is supported by a number of volunteers, including artists, students, teachers, and community members. So I encourage, if you are interested to participate in the garden, to visit. We gather every Saturday. I usually go every 2 Saturdays. They are located right here in Baltimore City, 209 McAllister Street, and you can visit their website. So if you can put the image with their info. So Kenya Miles is a textile artist and a farmer. She's part of the garden. You can visit her website, thebluelightchongchong.com. And also Rosa Tusi Chang is another artist and research, is also part of this garden. And she also create a beautiful project called the Indigo Shade Map. This is an interactive map, infographic map that connects the practice of different kind of indigo grows all around the world. So I encourage you, if you are interested in the indigo process, dyeing and growing of the indigo, go to their website. And also Rosa is organizing at the end of this month a natural dye symposium. So to open a conversation and connect with other people who work in the art of natural dye. And I will be also part of an online exhibition. So please visit her website, indigoshademap.org, or her Instagram, indigoshademap. So also I encourage you to visit my website and send me any questions, email. I will be happy to share any info or answer any questions you may have. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. This is a beautiful and amazing event. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye.
Thank you so much, Jorgelina. I'm going to echo Linda Cato's comment, just how she's impressed at how you have adapted Japanese art forms to create these lampshades. It's just brilliantly innovative. They're so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your work.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
We have come to our final artist performer of the show. Asia North 2021 welcomes NB, who is a musician and producer who sings of Handiasporia blues. Born in Koreatown, Los Angeles, but calling Baltimore their home, they explore the dissonance between home, journey, and pain of diaspora through their music, inspired by traditional Korean music, rhythm and blues, music of the Black diaspora, as well as 1950s Korean soul music that their dad loudly sung on family road trips. They have worked with Red Emma's Collective, Fusion Partnerships, Ozone Collective to create platforms for POC artists, and the North Avenue Knowledge Exchange for free community workshops in Baltimore City. They have performed on stages in Baltimore, Maryland, including Creative Alliance, The Crown, Metro Gallery, Wind Up Space, and they did perform at our inaugural Asia North Festival back in 2019. Asia North 2021 welcomes NB.
Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Today, I invite you to breathe in with me. Breathe out. And root in. I invite the ancestors. I believe that whoever you are and whoever you are becoming, whether we know it or not, we are completing the dreams of our ancestors. I invite you to feel and process with me my journey and my reflection of the Atlanta shootings this past month. This is my song in response of the anger and the pain that I feel of this racialized and fetishized violence. And how it made me feel invisible, but have inspired me to process and feel with you today. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you feel me? Do you know me? Do you know me? Do you hear me? Do you see me? Hey, don't accept your power. You don't know my name. You don't know where I come from. Don't accept your pain. Yeah. Why are you so bad? Breath of the ancestors. 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 Oh, oh. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Right behind me are your nightmares, taken granted for.
Listen to me, baby, this your last chance. No change is gonna stop this trouble. Breath of the ancestors, breath of the ancestors, breath of the ancestors, breath of the ancestors, breath of the ancestors.
Thank you for joining me today. I also hope to share with you a piece of what my care and love looks like. Sometimes love and love for community looks like struggling with those you love through intimate and challenging conversations to find deeper mutual understanding. This is a conversation between my mother and I about the uprisings and the Black Lives Matter movement. But Oma, I'm confused and hurting. But Oma, my friends, families, community are hurting. But Oma, I know that you work 16 hours a day, but Oma, I do feel grateful. But Oma, 3.1 운동, Korean independence would not have happened without unrest and resistance. But Oma, why would people want to destroy their own neighborhood? Because they're angry. We are angry that we are not protected. But Oma, police never protected us in LA Pokdong. They were in rich white Beverly Hills. But Oma, Yu Gun-soon would not have started a revolution if she had kept her head down during the Japanese military occupation. But Oma, Dad almost got shot in the face by military for student demonstrations against brutal dictator. But Oma, that is what my Black friends and community may face every day. But Oma, I am hurting. My friends are hurting. But Oma, 이 심장 아시잖아요. You know how this feels. Why can't you hurt with me and listen? But Oma, the US military did not only feed you Hershey's chocolates when you were starving as a child. They served you racist military propaganda. But Oma, Black people have been working hard building the foundations of this country since slavery. But Oma, one Black president does not erase history. But Oma, how can I translate all of this? Oma, you love me. I love you. I love my friends and community. And my friends and community are being hurt and shot by police. 어머님, 내 친구의 생명은 중요합니다. 흑인 생명은 중요합니다. Thank you. I have one more song piece to show you to close out. This song is called Energy. And in the same breath, I invite my ancestors and the philosophy that whoever we are becoming, whether we know it or not, we are completing the dreams of our ancestors. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for organizing this event. Thank you for my collaborator, Sage, who helped me with this video. I hope you feel my
energy. 백두산을 넘어 그대를 향한다. 백두산을 넘어 내 자신을 향한다. 백두산을 넘어 그대를 향한다. I'm in a mountain sea, her destiny. Something to the top, guided through the sea. The eyes appear, they knock my heart, my history. The pages I write all come with a fight to be seen. But do you remember the euphoric ways, dysphoric days? Yeah, you're meant to live, be a survivor. Past lives on my shoulder to say that I need it. I know that I don't. They underestimate the future I hold. Say, ooh, my energy, ooh, my philosophy. Ooh, feel my energy, my energy, my energy. I'm worth it. I live in my truth will be told. They underestimate the future I hold. Say, ooh, my energy, ooh, destiny, your energy, we're meant to be free. Singing, hey, our destiny, we're meant to be free. Singing, hey, our destiny, we're meant to be free. Swimming through patience, waves are crashing, seas are warm. The dreams that paved the way no longer heart is torn. Covered in disappointment, I'm the only one. Am I the only one? Yeah, don't take it, your time, don't waste it. Realize your desires. Unleash, unleash your power. They underestimate the power I hold. Say, ooh, my energy, ooh, my philosophy. Ooh, feel my energy, my energy, my energy. Worth it, I live it. My truth will be told. They underestimate the future. Hey, ooh, feel my energy, ooh, my philosophy. Ooh, your destiny, my energy. We're meant to be free. Singing, hey, our destiny, we're meant to be free. Singing, hey, our destiny, we're meant to be free. 백두산을 넘어 그대를 향한다. 백두산을 넘어 자신을 향한다. 백두산을 넘어 그대를 향한다. Climb in a mountain sea, a destiny. 백두산을 넘어.
Thank you very much for joining the community. I'm sending out love to those who are feeling pain and grief with me. Thank you.
Thank you, NB, and also happy birthday. I know it was your birthday yesterday. Thank you for such powerful performance. And with that, we're at the end of our kickoff event, and I want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you for all our supporters, our sponsors, for making Asia North 2021 possible. We'll be sending all of you a survey to fill out. Please let us know what you thought of this program to help us make better programs in the future. And Asia North, our virtual events aren't over tonight. We'll be heading over to Charm City Night Market. They're doing a night market online cooking demonstration with Heather of Brown Rice. And so that, I believe that's starting now. So I'll be heading over there once I log off of here. So again, thank you all for joining us. And please make it to our virtual events coming up. Go to towson.edu/asianorth for links to register to all of those events, and also visit the art installation in Station North and also our online exhibit. So thank you all. And thank you to all the artists and performers tonight. You were wonderful. Thank you.